So what you see on the screen right now is what the existing FCO is. We'll go through each of the parameters, what is existing and what has been recommended as the proposed change. So the first is the total organic carbon. So first changes to the FCO were made in 23, between the period of May to July 23. So this is basically reflecting that as the base. The total organic carbon, it says it is minimum 14%, but this should actually be amended to 9.4%. The reason being, earlier the CN ratio used to be 20, and now it has been revised to 30. So this is just a mathematical error, because when you have changed the ratio, this also needs to be adapted, that how the total organic carbon needs to be revised. So it's purely a mathematical correction. Then we talk about NPK, which the current norm talks about 1.2%. Now, a very important part here is that FOM is not a source of nutrient. It is not a fertilizer really, right? It is a source of carbon. It is a source for improving the soil health. It is a kind of a soil health enhancer or a soil conditioner, and not really a source of nutrient over here. So why am I being judged for NPK when I'm not good at that? It doesn't make sense, right? So ultimately, it is the total organic carbon is what needs to be looked into, and not NPK, right? So this minimum, in any case, when we also look at bodies like FAO, they do not acknowledge any NPK less than 5% to be an organic manure, right? So that is already existing. So that is the reason why we say either you completely omit, NPK, or you reduce it. But what's the point reducing it to 0.4%? It is just a very, just to avail the MDA, you need to be there, right? So it doesn't make sense. Finally, I think it is being acknowledged. CN right now is 30, right? Now, when there is no NPK discussion, and when we acknowledge that the nitrogen is missing at all, right, or it's going to be at a very low level, so either you completely, the CN ratio also needs to be omitted over here. But again, this faces a lot of resistance from the agriculture community, and I mean the agriculture scientific community. So we will see what we'll get to hear from that side. And I have Dr. Gupta also with us. He's also going to share his views on this. Then we talk about particle size. Now, the current norm says that 90% of the material needs to pass through 4 mm sieves. Now, that is not going to happen. It will not work. And the ironical part over here is that when the government can allow in situ management, which basically means you take the entire leftover of the crop back into the ground, if that is allowed, then what 4 mm particle size are we talking about here? Again, doesn't make sense, right? So particle size again needs to be corrected. Then we have other parameters like conductivity, pH. So there are some parallels with other organic manures or bio-enriched organic manures. So the current norm is 4, but for example, in case of PROM, it is up to 10, right? So this is again, we have submitted that either we draw kind of comparable parallels over here, or we relax it a bit, so that at least all the CBG producers, without any significant cost into this so-called enrichment, are complying to it. Now, enrichment is a very vague and ambiguous word. I really don't know what it means, because in the name of enrichment, a lot of things can happen, right? So if a production process is coming out with a FOM, LFOM in an as-is state, should be able to get disbursed either in a bulk form or in a packaged form, right? So it's important that these parameters need to be adapted. And what we get to know from the Ministry of Agriculture right now is that there is an acknowledgement of all these aspects, and there is work related to introduction of a kind of a soil conditioner in progress. Okay, so now whether that is going to be still retained in the FCO or will it be outside the FCO, that is something we cannot comment on at the moment, but this is something which is work in progress. The catch here with the FCO inclusion or exclusion is, and Nagpal ji is going to talk about that as well. I mean, all of us are basically not really, our major concern is, am I going to get the MDA or not? Right? And the kind of precondition to getting the MDA is, it needs to comply to the FCO. Right? So that is where we are kind of stuck. And in the third part, after we have heard all our colleagues here, what kind of basis is going to be there, even if this product is going to be positioned as a soil conditioner, how do we how do we completely omit those stages of B1, B2, getting it inspected by the State Agriculture Department? It's a super bureaucratic process, right? Ultimately, the objective is got to be the monetization of FOM, LFOM should become a part of our regular cash flow, monthly cash flow. The way we get the money for the CBG every fortnight or every month, same way this money also needs to come into the business case. Only then the plants will be really able to survive, right? So with this, I am going to, stop here on the legislation bit. These are the changes which have been proposed. I'll now request our colleagues from the industry. So we'll start with Ever Enviro. Then post that, Som, and we have Atul from Indian Oil Adani Ventures. We will have Mr. Nagpal from Sampoorna Agro. We'll also have Dr. Gupta. So we have 5-6 people, speakers over there. Again, request to restrict their talks to about 10 minutes, right? So we'll start with you, Mahesh.
Good morning, everyone. Ashish, great to start with FOM, actually. We are not into the business of gas alone, so that's already a good change you already made, that we're starting with FOM, because we are into the business of circularity, right? As Madam said, that every part of this biomass can be used, and this clearly demonstrates that in a typical plant, if we are able to, monetize or create, sales for FOM, LFOM, and with gas, nothing is left except CO2, and there are very options to take care of the CO2, right? And even in case of MSW project, there are some process rejects, they can be converted into briquettes. And I can tell you that these things are happening on the ground now, and it can become a kind of a zero landfill project going forward, right? So just to introduce myself, Mahesh Girdhar, I am MD CEO of Ever Enviro. I come from fertilizer background. I am master's in soil science. And then I spent a lot of time into agriculture industry for about 30 years, into crop protection, biotechnology, launched BT Cotton in India, and then was recently leading a fertilizer company of 5,000 crore before joining Ever Enviro. It's an energy, but to me, it's a lot of agriculture here, and a lot of farmers, and and rest is a process, it's an engineering process. So we're currently operating 5 projects on almost all feedstock, and we are about to start our 6th next month. So we are operating country's largest MSW project in Indore. So we experienced now 2 years, and I can share our experience there. We are operating 2 projects in press mud in UP and 2 projects in paddy. So all 3 feedstock we experienced. And by now, in the last, let's say some of the projects came on stream about 6 months back. Gas start first and then starts FOM, LFOM. So by now, we have also experienced FOM, LFOM in all these 5 projects, including the bulk sales part of FOM, LFOM, and also bagged sales part of that. We also launched our own brand called Avardhan. I'm not branding here, but we launched our brand. And when I joined, I thought the same way, like everybody will think that's a fantastic FOM. It can be enriched, bagged, and sold. It will replace fertilizer. That's not the case. It's not a heavy nutrient product. We all know that. However, because it has a carbon, and which enhances organic matter in the soil, it has a huge fertilizer use efficiency impact, right? And that's by experience. In my previous organizations, we had launched organic inorganic combinations. We actually fortified the DAP and PKs with certain organic matter to enhance the organic carbon in the soil, and use uptake efficiency went up. We could see that the phosphorus which gets fixed in the soil, becoming aluminum ferrous phosphate, 70% gets fixed, 30% is available, 50% of nitrogen gets lost in the air or leached out, about 40% potash is available. So we are actually putting a lot of chemical fertilizer by giving 2 lakh crore of subsidy and not utilizing it, right? So that I saw a great opportunity that it's possible for us to actually help farmers make the soil healthier, as well as reduce over a period of time the fertilizer uses. And this can happen. Technically, this can happen. It has been proven in many countries. We've seen in Denmark and Germany, where the biogas plants are operating. There is a tanker which is sitting there. The tanker brings manure from the farmer's field. It gets degasified. Tanker is filled back with the liquid fertilizer, no mandatory requirement, no checks requirement, no quality requirement. It goes back to the farmer's fields, and they've created tanks in the farmer's field. It gets loaded there before the crop is goes into the soil. Simple process working very well. And this can be done in India as well. So let me start where do we stand today, and where do we see certain issues which need to be resolved, and beyond what FCO part, what Ashish has covered. So when we look into, let's say, bagging part of it, right, whereby the fertilizer ministry has organized multiple tenders by the PSUs, and they start coming. So the policy start working, which mean NFL, IFGE, CRIPCO, they start coming up with the tenders to support us. It was a good move. However, when we look into producing that bagged material, number one, the moisture has to go down from 70% to 40%. Despite you are allowed to sell at organic carbon at 70%, moisture need to go down. It's a huge energy intensive, material movement intensive activity. And in certain feedstocks, it even doesn't happen. MSW, we think it's easy, but in case of MSW, this has an intrinsic moisture property, which is there in the biomass. Whatever you do, it doesn't get dried. We experience that, right? In our plant, we are only able to produce 25% of that material. 75%, even after 60 days, is not getting dried. In case of rice, you need much longer time. You will have to keep it longer, aerotilling process, right? Maybe 60 days. Then you get it. So the key issue when we start looking into bagging the material is the cost going up, time to produce going up, area required going up. That builds up cost, and when we start doing marketing of that products through our own brand and through fertilizer companies, we didn't see value, because your cost of production is going to in a range of, let's say, 2,500, plus you have to transport that. It costs another 1,000, right? So if your cost of supply and production become 3,500, then little left on that, right? And then you have to create demand, because you have to also work with large number of farmers. However, that model as a part of overall supply chain is a good, because that allows you to take your fertilizer to high value crops outside. So that is one what we experience, that it's possible to produce, but the production cost and time taken and land requirement is very high. From economics perspective, that's a challenge. Yeah. So that's one of the experiences. First slide shows the process. On the liquid fertilizer side, yes, it's possible, but liquid fertilizer, liquid LFOM, I come from fertilizer, so I'm using fertilizer, but it's LFOM. So LFOM, again, cannot be used throughout the year. And there is a huge production happens in a press mud plant. If you are feeding 100 ton, you are getting 40 KL every day. If you are feeding 500 ton of a MSW, you are getting 250 KL every day. And same kind of TS balance required for rice, and you get little lower quantity, but you have to discharge certain LFOM. And it's a good product. It has a organic carbon, right? It's possible to produce that. But the key question is then, how do you store it? Because you can only use pre-season. You cannot use in crop in many places. During winter, during raining time, not possibility. So you need to create huge storage. So when we start looking into, it's a capital intensive activity. For a 20,000 KL, it cost around 1.75 crore, put a tank. You can now calculate that how many tanks would be required. We prepared a proposal and submitted to Department of Fertilizer that if you want to really create infrastructure and a value chain for LFOM, we are giving you the model. We said that we created a model whereby we have bought tankers at our plants. In 2 plants, we created large lagoons where we are able to store. In other plants, we have to put capex, but we'll see how the policy goes and whether there is a policy stability, then only we put the capex investment. So extraordinary requirement of storage as well as movement. You don't need to pack that. There's a good recommendation and farmers like it, what we have seen on the ground. So we have been able to successfully create farmers' interest, right? And at one of the plant, mistakenly we had sent about 20,000, 20 KL, right? Very near to the plant. And the farmers start loving it, right? And nearby farmers start asking that, we would all apply that. So we see a traction, we see the benefit of the farmer, they are able to see even in the first year. Although the organic carbon addition will result 2-3 years time to give you the full benefit. But in first year we could see that. But the key requirement is capital intensive. It would require to be create infrastructure. Infrastructure could be in the plant. We can also follow a public infrastructure, what Denmark is doing or other countries are doing. Create public infrastructure in the villages. Everybody takes that and push the material there. You store large tank and you create a kind of a petrol pump. The model we have submitted to Department of Fertilizer, that you create like a petrol pump. Farmer will come with the tank and take it back to his field. Those are potential models, but here nothing is yet moving in detail. We are putting our own capex and of experiencing ourselves. This I already said that the cost of production of bagged material is high, right? So it's very difficult to actually economically justify production on that. These are the certain challenges. As I already explained that, because of weather, because of intrinsic nature of the feedstock, time taken is quite large. Certain specific MDA related, I don't want to cover the MDA related policies, but I'll just go to the certain policy requests beyond what Ashish had said, that we need to differentiate bulk and bagged material because of its production process and the cost involved, right? Which means that the higher incentive need to be provided when we are bagging, and when we are currently supplying as bulk, current level of incentive are sufficient. That's our proposal. That then there is a value because you will be then able to further upgrade these products, bio-enriched, go into prom if you start experiencing a proper low moisture based product. So that's one differentiation required from an MDA perspective. If you look into cost perspective to the exchequer, it won't change much. Because if you have 70% moisture and you have 1500 rupees MDA, if you bring it down to 40, you are actually reducing the quantity, right? And you are making a product which can be taken farther away from the plant as well. So from a total cost perspective, it may not impact much. However, it will allow industry to actually come up with a better product, right? So that's the proposal, what we think is the main one. Secondary, we are saying mandatory offtake of FOM initially, like even in CBG there are mandatory offtake, but much more participation from fertilizer company widely, and because that will be, they have a large network. Wherever you have bagged sale, we should leverage the current network in the country. There are 500,000 dealers who are operating fertilizer. Maybe 1% of them are not actually today fertilizer. There is a policy issue, that when we are moving from one state to another state, the MDA process doesn't act. Even we need that was not enabled. We should have one national certificate, and we should not have any certificate. We should be allowed to move nationally wherever you can create market. And I think you will talk about more in detail. As I said, that support on FOM, LFOM market development through differentiation of that. One more issue we have seen, and which others may be facing as well, the recommendation from ICR is of FOM. LFOM is only one crop mentioned in that, right? If the specs are same, if the organic content, nutrient content by FCO is same, the dose recommendation is same, it should be reversible. you use FOM, LFOM. We don't need to create two categories. If the products are different, then we can. What we can only say is that timing of use. You can use LFOM throughout season, but FOM you cannot use. FOM has to be buried before in the soil. So they should be replaceable, and there should not be any difference in terms of recommendation, so that it's easier. Okay, I'll not go more into detail because other colleagues are talking about that, and you already mentioned the particle size from FCO requirement. So I'll stop there. MDA related discussion we can do later, and my colleague Kanwar will take up 2 slides on MDA after we finish this. Yeah? Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I have the 10 minutes challenge, plus I'm speaking after 2 big experts, so I'm going to try and make not repetitive content, and there has to be some value. But let me start with a bit of background. My name is Som Narayan. I'm co-founder of Carbon Masters. As a young entrepreneur, I started in the space. Initially, I didn't set up the plant. We went and sold gas, and the gas we procured from Indian Oil Adani Ventures, IAVL, in Namakkal. We learned how to build the retail market, sold it at par of LPG, which is at 85-90, and then realized that we can set up our plant in our city, Bangalore. We did set up MSW based plant because the feedstock is available throughout the year. Thought that the storage challenges are not going to be there, and the availability of feedstock, but again you get into source segregation, etc. So we partnered with another waste management company. So all going well, but I just want to stress a few points, since this session is about FOM, LFOM, that unless we fix, as you can see on the slide, unless we fix the 90% of the whole products coming out of the plants, these plants are not going to be commercially viable. Whether we get 90% or 100% against CBG, CNG price, or we get fossil fuel price, unless, I think all the speakers have already mentioned that. And in case of MSW, it's anywhere between 3 to 4% of your initial feedstock. In agri, it could be 10%. But still, the bulk of the issue is that it's an agri business as well. And we fully believe that it has to go back to soil. So then comes the aspect that from the last 4-5 years, our attempt has been around how do we actually create products out of the big chunk. And we've done some work. I'll be able to share. We are also new to LFOM and FOM. We started with the branded product. Kevin, my other co-founder, comes from PNG, so it was always about going out with the brand in the market. But then we also realized that this is a huge volume, so we need to have FOM, LFOM, and branded products. And then with LFOM, this is a daily production, and you can't really store, as our earlier speaker said. So basically, the amount of FOM and LFOM coming out of each plant needs to go back to the soil, and it has to go back in the very close by radius from the plant, right? Otherwise, it's not going to work. So what we have done in terms of handling LFOM, for us is FOM is not such a big challenge because we are able to brand and sell it as solids. And I'll tell you, we are doing roughly about 7 to 10 tons of branded product sales per day. So hitting about last year we did about close to about 1,500 to 2,000 tons. Now that's not been easy. That has required a lot of partnerships. We tried selling it directly to the farmers. The dealers don't pay you. And then, you're in the loop continuously because the cash flows are going to get impacted if you don't monetize this stream. So then with this whole MDA program, we thought this is excellent. So let's make some investments. We bought a CBG tanker, basically CBG vehicle. As you can see that that's a truck with completely running on our carbon lights gas, which is produced from the plant. And then we are taking it into the farmers' plots. We also have a tractor tanker as well. Now, I think earlier speaker also mentioned that it can only be applied at land preparation. That's when it's easy for the farmer to convince. Let's say a 15-day gap, 20-day gap before the cropping cycle, they're happily able to accept it, and they've got excellent results. We have no issue at all. Now, when we are trying to do it in the middle of the crop, we have tried the furrow method, no problem. We've tried other methods where we've also got a backlash where the crops get burnt, so you can't do it in the middle or in the early stages, whereas the furrow method has helped us to not have any negative impacts. And then this is where the storage aspect really will come into play. Lot of farmers, every farmer has about 1.5 to 2 tons of waste coming out of their 1 acre land, right? If we were to, this is one farmer who's basically doing a DIY method by taking our slurry. So if we were to enable farmers to have some kind of a storage mechanism, maybe like a 10,000 liter storage subsidy, or the community angle that Mahesh was talking about, that's an excellent model, because the kind of volumes that we are producing on a daily basis, it's impractical to think of storing it in our plant. Or have a long term policy, like say that it's 5 or 10 years or long term, or till the lifetime of the plant. Then I think we can take extra land and create storage tanks on our own. On the farm part, what we are also doing is, because we are MSW feedstock, we get a lot of biomass, garden waste. So we use that slurry to spray it, we then aerate it, dry it, sieve it, because the current spec requires you to do that. In fact, at the last stage on the branded product, we also fortify it with biofertilizers. Now, couple of things here. One, the cost at which scale that we are doing. Our costing is around 5 rupees per kg. That's at least what you need, before you bag it and sell it out in the market. Without that, the amount of time and effort that's required to do this much of process, and then we're able to meet the spec. That's the other thing. We're not worried about meeting the spec, because both the carbon and the nitrogen in MSW is not such a huge challenge. But again, you're always fearing whether are you going to be compliant if an officer comes and picks up the sample. Whereas the model should be around circular economy, circular fertilizers, which is all about what comes from the soil goes back to the soil. We are not chemical fertilizers. So why should we be put under the radar like chemical fertilizers? We shouldn't be questioning. We are putting back only the amount of organic matter came from that particular soil. So therefore, that should be much more liberalization around that aspect. So just a couple of more minutes on what we have done in terms of branding it. The pricing that we are able to get is close to about 8 rupees. But if you ask me, can I scale it up to 1 lakh tons? I would say no. It will require a lot more deep pockets. It will require advertising, a pan-India presence, etc. So it will require all the 3 models to work for CBG plants to survive, because you can't get all the model of branded organic manure within the catchment area of 50 to 100 kilometers. So our organic manure is now going up to 150 kilometers. Beyond that, it doesn't make sense. Even if I go out there, the transportation cost is extremely high. So as I said, the final process, we follow the same thing. Use the biogas slurry along with greens and browns, windrow composting, add the biofertilizers. And what we've also done is, for a niche set of farmers who are looking for export market as well as organic produce, we've got it also certified by the IMO. This is a specific standard that we meet that will allow you to then become the input organic certified fertilizers, because today there's more on the shelf than what you can actually buy as organic, right? Everybody questions, is it really organic? And then the farmer has to prove that everything in the process is organic that he has used, and that will help our product to get sold. Then again, these are some of the farmers, excellent results. There's no problem. I mean, we just need to unlock certain aspects, policy aspects. Farmers, most farmers that we're working have soil samples tested, and their organic carbon is less than 0.5%. Now, how much ever, our friend will agree here, that how much ever organic, chemical fertilizers you put into it, unless you have organic carbon in the soil, it's not going to deliver yields. And in fact, the studies say that there's been a decline in the yields. And unless we fix the organic matter, organic carbon, we are not going to get results. These are just some photographs on how we are documenting it. We are taking farmer producer organizations, giving them trials. These studies cost us. That's there again, government could help, create multiple level of field trials. with a standard products out there, and then make sure that there is enough awareness around putting more organic carbon. And I think everybody knows that the amount of subsidies that we are putting into chemical fertilizers is not sustainable. So either stop that or create a level playing field here. This is, even GIZ were supporting us on one project where we could test it out with some 20 tomato farmers, and their yields had all, the minimum increase in yield they got was above 15 to 20%. So while we are surprised how something, when they say that it takes 2 years, 3 years, but suddenly when you do it with the right product, right blend, good amount of biofertilizers, and put it on the fields, across crops, it's giving very good results. I mean, this is another project that we did. There's a huge demand for organic cotton, and this was one project that we did. We got excellent results there as well. There's some photographs. I'm just going to focus 2 more minutes on the challenges. So let's face it, we have a reluctance to, farmers are reluctant to pay, whether it is LFOM, FOM, or even branded organic fertilizers. There's a ceiling there. One, because you can't have a market where there's 3,000 rupees of urea per bag that is being given to them at 250 rupees, and suddenly you're coming with a dosage of 25 bags per acre, and each bag costs 600 rupees or 500 rupees. So there is natural reluctance. They don't see, and I also think that there's no business case for them to be using more than 5,000-7,000 rupees of inputs overall. So there is a strong resistance to pay. So I think we need to have this market development assistance for the next 5 years, 7 years, whatever is possible, so that we can really create a level playing field for CBG projects. The next thing was, I think the earlier speakers have already covered. I think we need, now that there are at least about 40-50 CBG plants running, we need to take samples, understand what values are generally achieved by these plants. Rather than, it's 0.4, a lab will make a mistake, and if it's 0.1, and then I'm in trouble, right? 0.4 is like, a very, very narrowed, reading on whether it's on various parameters. This is the last part that I had about the storage costs. I think we need to come up with models where we can create community storages, and farmers can really benefit out of that. They all have tractors, so transportation is not going to be difficult. And then my other point around the branded fertilizers is that the current legislation has a lot of restrictions. We should think and propose, and I think a lot of speakers here and the industry will agree, that it should be made more widely available to farmers. That's basically by removing the FCO retail restrictions. It should be available in a Kirna store. Why should it be only available in a licensed dealer shop where they rule that entire geography? Rather than that, if it's available in every Kirana store, that would be a major help for this. To bring more channels. It could be available in, let's say, if Indian Oil and all the oil marketing companies are, having CBG in their, diesel bunks. Why not have also have fertilizer bags? So that's about it. Happy to answer any questions later on. Thank you.
Good morning, all of you. So we have a plant at Namakkal in Tamil Nadu. So since this discussion is related to FOM, I will try to focus on the FOM part only. So we all are aware that we are covered through the latest notification of 2021, and there is also MDA declared of 1500 rupees. So that part I will cover it at the last part of the interaction. We talked about the benefit of FOM and LFFM. So when we see India as a potential market, so more specifically to the biofertilizer, the market size is about 128 million US dollar, and it is expected to grow by almost double in next 7 to 8 years of time. And the studies have coming up clearly that the CAGR growth rate will be 8 to 12% for the next decade or so. Globally, this market is very huge, around 2.26 billion US dollar, and it's almost triple by size in next, say, 10 to 11 years of span. When we talked about Indian fertilizer market as a whole, it's at 42 billion US dollar at the level of, say, around 40 MMTP of volume. And this is also expected to grow in the coming years. And we all are aware that we are one of the high potential agriculture market in the world. And that is how potential for this product and the demand for having policies in place, a demand for people like us to play a role in terms of biofertilizer is very important here. So this is the plant. We are producing about 20 to 25 tons of FOM per day. And LFM, as Mahesh has explained, basically the concept, it's around 160 to 200 KL, depending on the market demand and the production levels. So there is a full process mechanism behind producing FOM. The intention here is to talk that sometimes there is a thought that this is a byproduct, or anyway you have to deal with this product. So whatever you are being offered, you take it and be happy. But that's not the reality. So there is a huge engineering mechanism involved. There are processes. There is a huge electricity consumption. Aero trailing has to be done thrice and 4 times as per the requirement and weather conditions. There is a decanter system in place. Decanters are supplied by companies like Thermax and Alpha Level. So very high in cost, and then you have to maintain those mechanism for this type of product. So a complete engineering setup is behind these production centers. So these are the parameters. Some of it Ashish has described and other people have talked about it. This is what the brand which we are marketing from last more than 5 years. This is called Aishwaryam, very well known in the southern states of the countries. And we have about 50 institutional customers. Out of those customers like Rallies, PL Agro, then Madras Fertilizer, we got a good order, Zuari Agro. So they are our few corporate customers. And as Som has mentioned about his product suitable for certain crops. So we also did a lot of R&D in last couple of years, and these products are suitable more for ginger, coffee, banana, cotton, chilies, etc., etc. And we are in discussion with certain companies whereby we can tie up for the liquid FOM in terms of Bharat Biogas, RIF, and SPIC greens. So this is the market typically we are catering from the Namakkal location. So this is important here to understand that our plant is a combination of 70% of press mud and 30% of chicken litter, and some seasonal waste like waste from the food industry in terms of ice cream waste, some point of time, mango waste, mango pulp, coffee waste, sago waste, etc. So with this combination, we are almost meeting all the requirement of FCO. In most of the cases, we are surpassing that. So that is why this product is one of the most popular in the region. So 2 points from my side here. There is a full mechanism engineering behind the production. So the product has to be valued at certain rate, and it's not byproduct, it's integral part of the production process of the CBG plant. I can tell by numbers that your 15 to 20% of the revenue has to come from this stream. It may differ from location to location, product to product in terms of your raw material, but this is the minimum requirement of revenue stream each industry has to have. We also have put this product as an online sale. It's available on Amazon. So post this session, you can go to Amazon, purchase at least 8-10 packs of 1 kg for your houses. Yeah, yeah, it's at a subsidized price. We'll put it there. Yeah. Okay. So I will not talk about it again because Som has covered it in terms of Aishwaryam and other his brand. So MDA. So policy is declared, policy is in paper, but actually the serious player like us, who is really adding value to 4-5 states in the southern market, we have really not got even a single rupees in last 1 year. So if there is a representative from respective department, you have to kindly take that note. And it's a good example that whatever central government decide in Delhi and how the people in respective states they treat it. So there is a huge gap in terms of communication, objective, etc. So there is also a scope that if something nationally we have decided, that states have to really abide to it, they have to really respect it in all the manner. So this is a product which is directly linked with the farmer and the circular economy which we intended to improve upon. So there is a huge scope in terms of this. I will not talk about the challenges related to B1, B2 farm, etc. But there is a huge gap in terms of the implementation. So that's all from my side in terms of this FOM and LFM. Just wanted to say again that it's integral part of the process. So policies and support has to come forward in terms of how can we quickly stabilize this part. But I will also take this opportunity to also mention that as Sangeeta ji was talking that about 40 number of plants they have distributed the CFA. And I'm happy to share with all of you that we are one of the plant. We got that CFA in the first week of this month. Thanks to MNRE, thanks to Gaurav ji, his team, and thanks to Sangeeta ji as well. So things are moving. We are optimistic as an industry. Things are moving in the right direction. However, it's important for us to bring such type of matters to the table so that we can really work jointly to make it happen. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. Well, I'm Sanjeev Nagpal, though I'm a qualified mechanical engineer, but farmer by birth. I've grown up in villages, I've seen agriculture right from the day Green Revolution was introduced till date. And I've seen it progress and then decline. What stage we are passing through and what we need to do now. Although India has moved on from food shortage to problem of plenty at hand. But we have also progressed in science from bullock carts to Mars on the orbiter on the Mars, and we aim to be the 5 trillion economy. But yet our food is not acceptable in the global market. The food we are growing today lacks nutritional value. 50% Indians are suffering from malnutrition. There is nutrition deficiency, maybe iron deficiency, calcium deficiency. All kind of diseases are related to nutrition deficiency. And we may not be importing food, but now we'll end up importing food supplements for $4.5 billion. That's a big shift, and that is where we need to address, and FOM is the solution, and that is why FOM is as important as CBG from the national perspective if we are looking at it. So this is something well known that our soils have declined, organic carbon is declined, our soil efficiency is reduced, and we are using far more chemicals than what is actually required. And at the same time, the greenhouse gases, our climate change that we are experiencing today, it's because our organic carbon, which was part of the soil, has gone back into the soil either as CO2 or methane. And if we are able to tap this and reverse the process, 1% increase in soil organic carbon will reduce 100,000 tons of CO2 from environment per acre. It's be a huge impact to reverse the climate change. We may be able to mitigate climate change for other processes, but biogas and promoting FOM is the only way to reverse what damage has been done already. And secondly, normally when we talk of soil health, we talk of nutrients. What is the NPK percentage? But in real, soil health is not nutrition. It is the organic carbon and the micro flora that has to be present in the soil to make the soil healthy. And that is what is, FOM is very important. And we have to enrich, modify our process in a way that we are enriching the soil biology. So, at the same time, 93% of our crops will be damaged because of the methane that is emitted from the soil. That is during the agriculture process when you are using unfermented manure, you are producing methane. And that is damaging our crops. So therefore, FOM and liquid FOM is the most important product of our biogas technology. And further to the process of producing FOM and liquid FOM, further developed technology to enrich it with various biological agents. Maybe it is fungal control or pest control or biofertilizers. So it's a unique technology that we have developed. And agriculture is a very complex subject. It is not that just one type of FOM is applicable across the time or across the field crops. So we have to adjust and modify our FOM and liquid FOM. For example, at the time of seed application, when we are treating the seed with the biofertilizers, your particular formulation is different for wheat, it's different for paddy, it's different for vegetables. And also your pH levels and other things have to be in coordination with the soil condition of your area. For example, if we look at Himachal, the soils are acidic. So we have to adjust our FOM according to the requirement of the soils. It has to be, we have to increase the pH value. Whereas when we talk of southwest Punjab, where I come from, the pH is very high, and even to the extent that the shrimp farming is possible. The salt levels are so high. So your FOM has to be adjusted accordingly, it has to be low pH. So just one single thought process that FOM is this particular formula will not work. So we have to have this flexibility, and that FCO is a big restriction. Now, for example, I was asked in Himachal to create a model farm. They are facing a lot of problem with their citrus plantation. I went there, took the samples, created a 4-acre demo farm. There was a sea change and 50% increase in yield. And now they want us to supply it. I said, you amend the FCO yourself. I can't do it. So this FCO doesn't allow this. So that is where, similarly, for liquid FOM, for different applications, we have developed products for specific to particular crop and the soil condition. And the results are phenomenal. But this flexibility has to be there. So my message to the government as well as the people as a whole, what do we want? What are we looking in the future? Are we looking for burning fields, toxic air, or we are looking for clean, healthy air and healthy soils? We have to adopt FCO and we have to promote this FOM. Otherwise, this will continue. And adjoining to is my patent certificate that I have for this technology to specific conditions for specific crops, we can produce a lot of good quality products. So these are some of the examples where we make huge impact on the crops. And this one is treated with chemical, and the soil was treated with chemicals. Adjoining to this same farmer is a biological treatment that we did. See the difference it makes in the crop. And the same, which was treated earlier with the chemicals, we adopted with the biological treatment, and the same crop was revived again. So this is the kind of impact we can create. And of course, this was earlier at my farm. I had set up a farmers training, but now it has been shifted thanks to ICR, their KVK at Abohor Now we have shifted this there, and we have started with this farmers training program there. We have our model farms. We have recently set up a mushroom training center where we can use this FOM for mushroom cultivation. And so we are doing a lot of activity in collaboration with ICR, and they have specially posted about 6 scientists at Abohar to help us guide the farmers and develop this whole. And so we even have a training center for farmers to take up shrimp farming, which is basically a sea fish, where we are doing it in Punjab. So one basic challenge, or what I feel will be the game changer. Recently, on 2nd December, Government of India, Ministry of Agriculture has issued a budget and a circular asking departments to set up demo farms for over 100 hectares, where using FOM to promote FOM. What my suggestion will be that they have mentioned the soil, test the soil, or the soil improvement. You are adding organic carbon, so it's a well-known fact that the soil will improve. What we need to do is to test the outcome of the crop, the quality of crop. The importance is how much improvement it creates on the quality of crop. I have samples from my farm or my adjoining farmers where this whole process is being used. The nutritional value goes up by 20%. So I have even the rice sample. Most of the people, we are talking of a fortified rice, and India are facing a lot of anemic problem. The iron goes up by almost 40% increase in iron content in our rice. So if government helps us and takes the samples of the crop nutritional value or the quality of crop and make it known to the people, so that there is a consumer preference to buy crops using FOM, that will be a game changer for CBG projects. And that's what I would like to suggest, that with this program of model farms, quality of crops should also be included in that. And thank you very much, and be glad to have questions after the whole session is over.
We still have 2 more speakers. I'll request Vivek to skip the parts which have already been addressed, and we'll conclude with Dr. Gupta after this.
Thanks, Ashish. Yeah, thanks a lot, Ashish. And yes, it's made my life a lot more easier with so many people already talked, all about LFOM, FOM bit and all. Just a small introduction. I am representing Reliance Industries, small association with CBG industry just about 4 years ago, 4.5 years. I started the compressed biogas business at Thermax way back in 2019 and joined Reliance to start their compressed biogas business 2.5 years ago in mid-2022. And since in last 2.5 years, Thermax has, Reliance has already invested close to 6,500 odd crores with over 50 odd projects which are under construction, and 8 projects are already selling gas and FOM. Now, a lot of things have already been spoken about. I will skip this portion of what is FOM, what is LFOM. I think a lot has been spoken about it. In terms of composting process also, I think number of my speakers have talked about the entire process, so I'm sure, with the August gathering over here, who already are aware of the subject, probably it will be too much of a repetition, so we'll just skip that. The only point that I want to make out here is that, yes, again reiterating what Mahesh and others spoke, that complete composting does take a lot of efforts, both in terms of time as well as resources. And the anaerobic digestion, after that, the aerobic portion, to make it a complete compost, takes about roughly 40 to 60 days. before you can call it as a proper compost, which is usable by the farmers to meet those FCO or exceed the FCO specifications. We obviously go through that entire process again, the composting, the aerotilling, etc., which again has been talked about quite a lot. And it takes minimum 40 days of aerotilling, number of times that you do in the aerobic conditions before you have a well-formed compost, which can be sold as a proper FOM in the market, meeting the FCO specifications. Again, in terms of the specifications, I think number of slides have been spoken, so I'll not repeat. Though, again, as I said, the process which we follow, you exceed the FCO specifications by far, both in terms of the carbon content, in terms of CN ratio, in terms of various nutrient qualities. However, the point here is that the cost, when it comes down to the cost of reaching those requirements, is very, very high. So, the discussions that we have been talking about is in terms of whether it makes commercial sense or not. We have been selling our FOM under the brand called Bhuvidyam last almost 1.5 years, and there are application recommendations which have been there. We have sold close to about 20-30,000 tons of Bhuvidyam in a packaged form so far. Across the country, and also started exporting it to a couple of countries already. So that's where we are in terms of, I think, again, the benefits of FOM by Nagpalji has been spoken at length. I would not get into it. But yes, the narrative has to change. I think the base point out here is that narrative so far, when it came down to fertilizer, was based on productivity. You had food issues, which was there. But I think today, with the development that we are in, or the state of development the country is in, the narrative has to change from productivity to nutrient quality of the crops. And I think that is where FOM comes into picture, and that is where your organic content, part of what goes into the soil, becomes very, very important. So far, the entire FCO specifications as well as the industry was totally focused towards productivity, and probably, it was the chemical fertilizer industry which, put the things through in terms of only protein content. We also know that, it's a latest fad among the kids these days, to get into the building of, their bodies and go into the gym. And all they talk about is protein, 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 protein. And as a parent, I keep telling, just protein is not sufficient. Unless until you have other minerals as well, your body is not going to be, you just can't be single focused on protein. And I think that is what has happened with industry. We are talking about only NPK content. There is no mention of organic content whatsoever when it comes down to fertilizers. I think that portion of organic content becoming more important and more prominent to be talked about. And as Nagpalji said, based on the soil conditions, what sort of a organic content, what sort of a nutrient which needs to go into the soil, with the base objective that we need to be looking at more nutritious food rather than just productivity. I think that narrative, if it changes from the policymakers to the industry, things will change and make an immense difference to the industry. So that is one thing which I thought, probably spend some time on this. Coming to the cost, we all talked about that it is possible to reach or exceed FOM, FCO specifications. However, there is a huge cost element that is attached to it. Does it make commercial sense? Now, a very simple breakup. If we were to take with the MDA of 1500 rupees per ton as a zero base, that we are talking about at 70% moisture, if something can fetch 1500, then where is the incentive for somebody to give a packed product which has a longer shelf life, which has got a better nutrient quality, to be getting the same benefit, when your actual cost components, when you look at, is minimum 3,000 rupees per ton when it comes down to back product, with the cost components that are these. Now, these are at scale. We're talking about much larger scale at Reliance, where maybe smaller players, the cost could even be much larger on per ton basis. So we typically, if we were to put the aero trailer and the other equipment, you have to have the manpower cost, you have the aero trailer and the diesel cost which is associated, you have the power cost, you have the capex that Mahesh talked about. You have to have, for a typical 20 tons per day of CBG output plant, what we have seen is you require minimum 4 acres of land for aero trailing. So the cost of land, the cost of equipment, the interest cost on the capital that you have employed, there is a material loss, which again he talked about. So the moment you try to get to the 4% sieving, you have roughly about 10% loss that happens. The moment you bring down from 70% moisture to say 35 or 40% moisture, there's roughly about 54% loss in the weight. So these losses are totally unaccounted for when it comes down to the current way MD is being given. So there is literally no incentive for the industry to give out a better product to the market. It's almost akin to CBG, where a 90% methane, should it be priced at 96, 97% methane of the CBG? What would incentivize somebody to give a 96% methane quality of CBG if he doesn't get any price benefit to it? So that's the point that we are saying, that back product will have to be looked at differently, because you have to have a shelf life. That means you necessarily need to get it down to the moisture level of 40% or below. There would be a separate things for bulk sale, and let there be a separate MDA and separate rule altogether for packed product, which meets or exceeds the FCO specifications and based on the quality of the product. So that's a kind of a breakup. So you roughly have about 3,200 odd rupees per ton, which is the actual cost, X works we are talking about, which, doesn't make commercial sense for anybody to sell that kind of a product with this kind of a space. So obviously there are challenges, and that's where we have, asked for certain recommendations, which I think number of them have already been spoken about by earlier speakers. But however, there is one more area which Atul talked about, and in terms of the retail sale, and even I think Som talked about the retail sale. Now I would fully agree with that we try to put our FOM through the thousands of retail sales of Reliance. I mean, that's a huge available space which is there. Unfortunately, the licensing requirements are so stringent that we can't use it. So it becomes a kind of a very closed distribution network that you need to go, and that's not widespread where your plant is. So the logistics cost just adds to it. So if the intent is really to enhance or to propagate natural farming and organic farming, then these bottlenecks need to be done away with. And till the time these bottlenecks of getting a right MDA in place, getting the licensing issue taken care of, I think the propagation of this product may not happen the way we are wanting to. So I think it's a big question that comes in. Is the intent versus reality? I mean, is there a big gap? Because here we are talking about natural farming, we are talking about organic farming, all over the place at different political levels. But reality is you have close to 3 lakh crores of subsidy to chemical fertilizer. And even if we talk about 300 plants of large size plants come into picture, a back of envelope calculation shows that the best subsidy, even at 3,000 rupees per ton, would not exceed more than 1,400 crores. So a government is not ready to give 1,400 crores for something that's talking about natural farming and organic farming, but is ready to give 3 lakh crores for chemical fertilizer. So is it, is the intent versus actions in sync? Is a question that, we need to ask the policymakers. And I think that's something which we need to push through. And I think the stakeholders out here are all there. I hope all of us influence together to, MRE of course is one of the things, but I think you have fertilizer and various other ministries which are involved. And I think unless until this is taken by all of us in a more collective manner, probably will not reach there. So with that, I think I would like to thank all of you for patient hearing, and maybe any questions later on. Thank you.
So Dr. Gupta, is there anything left?
Good morning, everyone, on the dais and off the dais. I have been the first principal scientist and the first principal investigator of the scheme Govardhan. from Government of India. It was the concept presented by me before the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers in 2019, and the concept note was written and accepted by Government of India on Govardhan. So from Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, it was given to us, and we were using the FOM, LOFM for our agriculture crops. Initially, as a mandate of ICR of IARI, we were asked to try for 7 crops: the vegetable leafy crop, pea, brinjal, the spinach, and the major cereal crops, wheat, rice cropping system, including the maize. So we tried this, and I have given the recommendation, which you are reading these days on FOM. But I have never said that beyond these crops, because we tried only for 2 years, and I got superannuated in 2023, and still I am in the panel of ICR for recommendations, further recommendations. And on every platform, I'm saying that we are not restricted to these 7 crops, because these were tried for 2 years, but we can go for this. It's an organic matter. Nothing is going to be harmed unless there is antagonistic bacterial or E. coli or salmonella, which is there in the MSW. We have a restriction, we have a reservation from ICR for the use of MSW-based FOM and LOFM, but not from agriculture residues or those agro-based industrial waste. We have never said on any platform, and it is well tested. ICR is well equipped. We have a laboratory of 500 crores instruments, and we have everything to analyze, right from protein, amino acid sequencing, cellulose, hemicellulose. Even in the biodigester, the protein and fat, these are the 2 components which are difficult to be digested. Therefore, the process is long. If it is cellulose, hemicellulose, nothing wrong in it. It can easily be digested, and within 30 days or 25. My own experience with press mud is that we get a good matured FOM within 25 days. The testing of immatured FOM, because I was listening that we have got a FOM, first anaerobic and then aerobic, and it takes 40 to 60 days for a complete, matured FOM. It's not like that. If it is half matured, you will have the half of the bacterials which are there in this compost, and which may play a wrong role because it is not symbiotic with the already microflora of the soil. Now, as already said by the speakers before me, FOM we should look from organic carbon point of view, not from NPK. Everything, what we say in the fertilizer control order or before that, our feeling or our perceptions were never wrong. FCO is not a wrong document or lacking something. It is an exhaustive document because we have to preserve our soil. So we cannot, add anything in the soil or any industrial waste in the soil in order to deplenish the, ability of production of the soil. So we have to take care of this. Therefore is the FCO. We are, feeding 141 billion people on a small land. So due to urbanization, industrialization, the arable land has been squeezed. Now when it is squeezed, we have to produce more from the soil. Now I give you few refreshing idea about FOM and LOFM. FOM and LOFM both contains a soluble form of nitrogen, that is in the form of ammonium ion and nitrate ion. And these are only the two ionic species through which the plant, irrespective of its nature, genetically it will take nitrogen in the form of either ammonium or in nitrate. Therefore, DAP, therefore urea. Why they are popular? Because they immediately convert into the ammonium and it has been taken up by the plant at a different locations. But at the same time, it goes into the groundwater, polluting the subsurface soil as well as the groundwater. So one thing is very clear, that FOM contains ammonium and nitrate form. We have a sequencing it, separation from the chromatography, and we got a good quantity of ammonium and nitrate in it, though it contains very less, say 0.4% of nitrogen. Secondly, we also have calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. We only look, I don't know what is our mindset. Our mindset is that we only look NPK. When we are talking of fertilizer, we say only N, P, and K. But there are secondary nutrients, there are micronutrients, which are very, very important for the plant, for their enzymatic activities, for their growth also. So calcium, magnesium, and sulfur is also sufficient in our FOM. Iron, zinc, and copper, these are also sufficient in our FOM. So FOM should be used. Now the problem is application by the farmers. My experience, because I am related only to the farmers, therefore I can tell you what is the problem with the farmers. The application, how FOM with high moisture content is applied on the field. It is a labor-extensive job. Therefore, the drying is very necessary. The other speaker has said about the, particle size, that why it should have a 4 mm sieve particle size. Because the soil cannot be aggregated. If it is applied in a less than 4 mm size, then it will trap into the cracks. And the water holding capacity of the soil will be improved. Proper aeration will improve, because it's like we are grown up with immunization, with nutrients, and with good food and other things. Similarly, the plant also grows with its own, way. So we have to take care of those important things. Now, organic carbon has a manifold applications. Number one, it improves water holding capacity. As I said, it improves aeration in the soil. The most important is microbial activities. Because in the soil or root zone, we have lot of microbes inherently present, and their activity will be enhanced. The nutrient uptake will always take place through the microbial activities. It will allow a passage, because it will open the mitochondria and the cells of the root. Then only the nutrient will go up. So organic matter has to be there in the soil in order to increase our productivity. So that's my important point here is. So end use efficiency, so minimizing the cracks, the chelating, that is another important thing. The carbon is a source of chelation for the heavy metals or many other things. So it will not only allow the useful nutrient to go up, but it will also inhibit that no heavy metal to go up in the plant. So that's the important points which I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Before we take up the questions, I have a question to all our speakers, whatever they are able to share. In some parts, we got some answers. My question is precise. If whoever can share some cost and price, packaged FOM, what would be an estimated cost of all the processes what we saw, the cost of doing it? Rough indication.
bagging, rough indication, let's say
Total
cost in the range of about 3,500 rupees per ton.
3,500 rupees per ton. Do we more or less agree on that? Yeah?
Slight same.
So roughly about 3,500. And what is the price at which you are actually able to, that's your net impact?
It's not more than 5,000. That's volume is too small today.
Too small.
So let's say the NFL tender came out.
Follows a similar kind of concept. So what you see over here is, it is important to understand what is going in. So that is why you see what is the kind of quality in terms of moisture content which is going in. So let's just focus on this average column, wherein we are saying that better quality feedstock, and I mean we are talking about moisture, right? So if you are able to collect 70% of our feedstock up to 20-25%, let's call it a better quality, and anything more than that is going to be of a lower quality here. So let's say we are coming to a weighted average of about 20% of the input moisture conditions over here, right? The feedstock input per day is 100 TPD air. 100 tons is what we are feeding, and we are assuming that the gas yield is roughly around 9%, right? So we are taking at across industry level that yield आज की date में plants का कितना आ रहा है. So all are ranging anything between 8 to 10%. So let's say 9% yield हमने लिया है. So basically the total organic matter which is fed is about 79 TPD. 100 TPD is my total. Moisture घटा दिया उसमें से 79 TPD आ गया. The raw methane which I am getting out of the whole process, let's say is about 50% raw biogas, which has a density of 0.7165, and the raw biogas density is 1.32. So I'm getting 9 TPD CBG production. You convert that into SCM, you get the raw biogas production again in SCM, then you exclude, the moisture out of it. We are assuming that it's an assumption that 5% moisture आपका raw biogas में है, not CBG. I'm talking at a raw biogas level. So the total solids which actually need to be extracted from the fermenter are 48,586. आपने 79 गैस बन गया कुछ का, and बाकी इतना solid आपको extract करना है. Now this solid needs to be extracted by two modalities, that is the FOM and the liquid FOM, right? To put it very simply. Now I am saying I am taking out 90% of the solids out in the form of FOM, and the 10% is coming out in the form of LFOM, right? So that's how the breakup goes down. So basically what it means is, at a 70% moisture, at this 70% moisture, you are taking out 146 tons of FOM, solid FOM, right? आपने 100 ton feed किया था, solid 146 आया, and you are getting about 60 tons of liquid FOM. Point being, you have a factor of 2.1. अगर आपने 100 TPD feed किया है, you are basically extracting 206 tons per day in the solid and the liquid part. I'm not talking about drying, and I'm talking at a 70% level. So that is the factor we are talking about here. Input to the FOM.
Your table is based on the paddy straw?
This is agri residue, paddy straw. So similarly, sir, we have also developed this for a press mud and also for MSW. उन दोनों केसेस में आपका फैक्टर कम आएगा क्योंकि इनपुट मॉइस्चर ऑलरेडी बहुत हाई है, राइट? सो द इनपुट मॉइस्चर ओवर देयर इज 70%, राइट? सो ऑटोमेटिकली द फैक्टर विल कम टू क्लोज टू अबाउट 1:1 हो जाएगा. Whereas in case of agri residue, the input moisture is low and the output moisture is almost 2 times plus.
There are few cow dung based plants also.
Right.
Where the moisture content is 80%.
Correct. Same. Similar. Animal waste will also have a high moisture in the input stage, right? So the thought process is that how about allocating such kind of a factor to each CBG production unit so that it becomes much easier, and it is directly linked to the gas production. Gas production is something which should be made very transparent. It has to be online monitored. I can't hide it in my plant. I mean, why? Because otherwise this factor cannot be implemented. So whoever is producing whatever volume of gas, it has to be linked to that. So this is something, again, work in progress. It has not been concluded yet.
Very good calculation.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it's done by we have taken inputs from all plants, not all plants, whoever has contributed. So similarly for other feedstock has been also computed here. So this is, yes.
Yeah, no, my question is slightly different. Looking at many of these things that we have been discussing, we have already articulated with the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Fertilizer and all that. Now, each of the speaker has presented what further intervention is really required, both in terms of market development assistance, production development assistance, and many other factors have. So, how do we really take it up with the government? I mean, see, we have requested for meetings with, a joint meeting with the Agriculture Ministry, with Fertilizer Ministry, with the Ministry of Petroleum, MNRE, so that there is a common understanding and market intervention, and policy intervention is taken, which is not happening in the last year and a half. So how do we go about this? That is the most critical part of it. All these, arguments that we are putting across, everybody agrees with that. But how do we really translate it into a certain policy which is really going to benefit it? What is that process? This is something that, I am really confused and I don't know how to go about doing it.
I totally agree. It has got to be taken up at a PMO level also, and I think we need more representation. Right now there are just 2-3 people or 4-5 people who are actually heavily invested into the topic, and they are the ones who are going with the with all these representations. We do not get enough representation contribution from the CBG producers. So I will be very candid over here. We need more involvement. Right, otherwise वो 2-3 लोग कितना कर लेंगे? Ma'am, you.
So very good session. It was good learning for us also. Answering to your question, very critical and important. Currently, as you know, under Govardhan, DDWS is looking at all policy matters, issues. That is the coordination ministry. And as you were aware last time, when Secretary also wanted that we can take, because we are looking at new policy for CBG specifically, new scheme as well as policy. So we'll see how we connect with, we are already talking with MOPNG, fertilizer also, Department of Fertilizer, our Secretary had written to him about that. But we'll look at that. We need more time to connect with all government sectors, and whether MNRE will do or some other agency, that we need to decide, Miss, again. So, but we'll have that holistic and cohesive approach, connecting, because that is very important, because it's not only one ministry's job, all ministries are involved, but as per their mandate, they have to do it. We need to connect all those things, that's important. We'll look at it. Right.
If MNRE could really take the lead in that would be really great.
We'll see, we are looking for, now currently we have Secretary now, new, who is given additional charge, so we need more time from Secretary also, current or future Secretary, yes, definitely, sure.
Vasim.
And another point, these calculations are very important for different feedstocks, normative production, what is the size and all. So this is required not only for FM, but all rest of the byproducts, products which are coming. And one point about registration, when under Govardhan it is say that the commissioning date something. The commissioning date for CBG is different, and commissioning date for MDA is different. So can we have that same? Because we understand that this comes late, 45 days or 40 days time is required, but commissioning date could be same.
Madam, out there, I think the definition of commissioning becomes very important. Because if 80% of capacity is termed as commissioning, then it could be 6 months, 8 months down the line. And the FM production will start at least 6 months, maybe at times for a larger plants 8 to 9 months before that. So then what should be that commissioning date or definition of commissioning? I think that becomes very important.
If I may just intervene, the commissioning date is basically when a plant gets a CTO, consent to operate. That means the plant is ready to go on, right? So that's a very official document which every plant will receive from the respective state. So you first get the consent to establish, and then you get the consent to operate. That's because otherwise you might inaugurate whenever you want to, but that is the sacrosanct date.
Yeah, but the point is for the
uniform
what ministry is taking or understanding the definition of a commissioning is when the plant is ready and it has the first sale which has done, even if we are not talking about it has to be 80%. The first sale from the plant is considered as a commission one.
So,
Exactly.
first sale of
that's
gas or first sale of?
First sale of gas.
Of gas.
So,
Okay.
so this
So,
is
but then-
this is
but
where
then-
the CTO is,
so-
because even for banking, even for banks, that's a CTO.
So it is not linked with 80%. That is not.
So
Correct.
over
So
here,
it's on-
there's one question, because the first sale of gas that happens, commercial sale, can happen much later than the first sale of FOM, because once you start feeding in the digester, if it's a large plant, you would still have a couple of months before your first sale of gas happens, before, FOM sales will start, maybe at least 2 months
As
before
long
that.
as I understand the chemistry also, so the quality of the FOM will come only after 30-40 days. And before that, the gas will start production.
Yeah.
Let it be, it may be a diluted one, but the gas production will be there. That is,
We can agree on that. You can discuss and then, so we
Yeah,
should have some uniform date so that we understand that. Okay, that.
No,
Thank-
so,
I'll
sorry.
take leave. You please
Yeah,
continue.
Sorry, ma'am. Just asking a question. See, of course, MNRE has done significant work in renewables, which is wind and solar. Now, in wind also, there's a concept. When you start pumping the power, there is a date of commissioning, but before that also the asset is generating electricity which is pumped into the grid. And for that also there are commercial agreements where the sale of power is allowed. It could be beneficial to relook at the date of commissioning from that perspective, that before commercial sale of gas, you have some output to be sold, and that could be picked up by the entities at a discounted rate, along with the byproducts. So we could formulate a suggestion, drawing lessons from what has happened in the other sectors. Yeah, I think.
Kevin.
Yeah, a comment and a question. I mean, you kicked off the meeting by talking about policy paralysis. If you go back to one of the issues that's raised, today in the LFOM standard and FOM standard, the carbon to nitrogen ratio is still showing less than 30%, although that's mathematically impossible.
Yeah.
So and I know why we're getting, and there's resistance from the scientific community, because rightly they're concerned if the carbon to nitrogen ratio is too high, the carbon will compete for the organisms in the soil and it will win versus nitrogen, so there'll be less nitrogen uptake by the plant and you will get a drop in yield, and that's what they're rightly concerned about. But that's the issue about paralysis. But for the industry, I think what I'm hearing today, all the issues that we've still got, there's a fundamental one for me. For the longer term, to develop the fertilizer business from CBG plants, is it helpful to be inside the FCO regime, or should we look at coming out of the FCO regime? Now, if coming out means we lose the MDA, clearly we don't. So I think we're in a cycle here. In my view, as we heard from Sanjeev, FCO is a barrier for innovation. On the retail side, I've had 2 conversations with the Ministry of Fertilizers, and to talk about liberalizing the distribution chain is a horror. They cannot think of a concept where you could ever sell a fertilizer anything other than an agricultural dealer, because that's all the world they've ever known. Now, it's perfectly legitimate for a chemical fertilizer that you control that, because it's like a drug. It'll end up in the food chain. But farmers have been putting manure on their soils for centuries without a fertilizer control order. What made us ever believe that putting an organic fertilizer in a regime designed for a chemical fertilizer is the right regime? It isn't, in my view. Now, interestingly, I was invited to a webinar in Brussels where they have defined a new segment in the fertilizer segment. It's called circular fertilizers.
And what are circular fertilizers? They're fertilizers made from agri-waste where you carry out a process. So it distinguishes what we do as CBG producers from existing organic fertilizers and chemical fertilizers. For me, I wonder whether that might be a route to solve this conundrum, that we create a new segment called circular fertilizers, and we establish proper standards for those which don't have anything to do with NPK, because you're not doing that for NPK. You're doing it, and the other issue, more than carbon, it was mentioned. The nutrient slurry from a biodigester is rich in zinc, magnesium, copper, as well as carbon. Those are all vital micronutrients to grow healthier, more nutritious food. So it's just not a carbon story, it's a micronutrient story. We could develop a proper set of standards that are feedstock specific, because the other issue we're finding with MSW, trying to get the right FCO standard for liquid from MSW is almost impossible, we're finding. We do it very easily with FOM on the process you've seen. We bring in other biomass to drive the carbon-nitrogen ratio up. But we can't get the right level of carbon from a lot of MSW. So we can't meet the 14% carbon standard for liquid. So there's lots of issues of which we've articulated this morning. For us, I just wonder what the panel think. From a strategic point of view, longer term, are we right to think about staying within FCO and all the restrictions? Or are we better, coming out of it and establishing the right standards for CBG producers that will do the right things for the business longer term?
I think just to add, we have a distorted NPK ratio in the country already. N is 4, P is 2, K is 1. And our more than 60% soils are deficient in zinc, iron. It's data published, it's all data-based, right? And the balanced nutrition is not happening. This is known to the fertilizer department. I've dealt 5 years. Known, everybody knows that. There are economic compulsion of giving a cheaper fertilizer, and that's why urea is low. We all understand that, right? I can talk very openly here, but it's truth. What we need to do, I think, and we should sit down in a small group, we'll have to bring all this scientific perspective of micronutrient, secondary nutrient gaps, and then look into our product profiles, match it, and then show that actually that's how we are going to help. It's known that zinc, iron is deficient, and iron deficiency is causing malnutrition, and children die because of this fact, right? Particularly in rice, what doctor said, it's fact. Entire East India or Bangladesh is suffering because of that. And we have not yet found the solution. And we have a solution. We have to, I think, add more value than just talking about FCO and subsidy, honestly. We'll have to create our story better, right? And that will help. Otherwise, we'll not fly, right? We'll remain under the clutches. So I'm willing to contribute. My colleague can do, we form a small group, take the help, and really create a much better story than just we are talking now carbon story only, right?
So, and one of the objectives for today's this thing also is got to make these smaller groups who are not just contributing verbally, but contributing by pen.
Correct.
Because a lot of representation, paperwork, documents, letters need to be sent with the government. So we need more support over here. So I think we should come to an end for this first very comprehensive block. Sir, please.
So in 2022, Niti Aayog has set up a task force, production and promotion of organic and biofertilizers with special focus on improving economic viability of Gausalas. Member Niti Aayog Agriculture, Subhash Chandra was the member. I was also member and Joint Secretary of Ministry of Agriculture, Joint Secretary Ministry of Fertilizer, scientists from IRI and some other organizations, and some Gausalas were the part of this committee. We deliberated over a year on this and then submitted our recommendations in 10th March 2023. And one of the major recommendations we submitted to the Prime Minister was that along with the chemical fertilizers, the companies which are selling the chemical fertilizers, they should also sell 5% or 10% or 1%, whatever is available of biofertilizers which is available in the nearby areas. And
Prime Minister agreed to that at that time. And then, because Niti Aayog submitted it to the Prime Minister and Prime Minister agreed and we received a copy of it. So that will be a better way of promoting our system with the Niti Aayog and then with the government.
It's like a blending obligation, the way the CBG blending obligation, right? So something like that could definitely help. Okay, Sanjay is not here. Should we take a 5-minute break and then continue with the next session? Yeah, I think it's been a heavy morning.
10-minute break.
10-minute break as requested. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.